The issue of forced migration is a global one, but one that is not often talked about and one that does not elicit much empathy or compassion, especially here. I think this has a lot to do with language, definitions, and the way refugees are portrayed. So let's break things down. Just who are refugees?
Refugees are ordinary people who live through extraordinary times. In the country they live in, conflict or persecution have put them at risk. They have no other choice but to flee and to leave their country to seek safety. This means leaving a lot behind, one of the hardest decisions a person can ever take. Refugees are no longer in their own country and have crossed at least one border. Ongoing conflict may put them at risk if they return, or they are at risk of persecution because of their nationality, race, or sexual orientation, or because they associate with a religion, a social group, or a political opinion. Some get jailed, or harmed physically, or mentally. Refugees often flee with no more than the clothes on their back and leave behind their everyday life. They may lose their home, their savings, their career, and often their family and loved ones. The journey to safety can be long and full of dangers. During the journey, people can get hurt, and sadly, many lose their lives. All of this can cause severe trauma. Fortunately, there are international laws to protect refugees.
The legal definition for international protection is all actions aimed at ensuring the equal access to and enjoyment of the rights of women, men, girls, and boys of concern to UNHCR in accordance with the relevant bodies of law, including international humanitarian, human rights, and refugee law. This definition was agreed upon by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, or UNHCR as they are known. Here's a little bit more about this UN agency.
The Second World War left nations torn apart and refugees fleeing their homelands. More than 1 million of them. Governments needed help. The crisis needed coordination. In December 1950, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees was established. In July 1951, the United Nations Convention relating to the status of refugees was adopted. A refugee is someone outside his or her own country and unable to return as a result of a well-founded fear of persecution on grounds of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership of a social group. Its founders thought UNHCR's task would take just 3 years. They were wrong. In 1956, Hungarians rose up against Soviet occupation and were crushed. 200,000 people fled their country. It was UNHCR's first emergency. The 1960s saw decolonization in Africa and wars. Independence wars, civil wars, border wars. Hundreds of thousands were forced to flee. Refugees were no longer just a post-World War European issue. They could be found across the world. And so the legal foundation guiding UNHCR's work was changed in the 1967 protocol. It would have global responsibility for refugees. In the 1970s, the spotlight of conflict shone on Latin America and Asia. In the 1980s and 1990s, new wars erupted in Africa, the Middle East, Southern Europe. The numbers of those in need spiraled upward in Lebanon, Somalia, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Uganda. In 1951, UNHCR started with 34 employees. By the end of 2014, it had over 9,330 working in 125 countries, and 146 countries had signed the Convention on Refugees. Its work recognized with Nobel Peace Prizes in 1954 and 1981. As conflicts have altered, so has the role of UNHCR. In the Balkans, UNHCR moved to work directly in the conflict zones, something it had not done in its first 4 decades. It continues to do so to this day.
Today, there are more forcibly displaced persons than ever before, and things are not going to get any better until the root causes of persistent oppression and inequality across the globe are efficiently addressed. I'm Michelet Donnelly, reporting for Sisters Who Brunch.
Thank you. I hope you guys found that really informative. The idea behind that was just to kind of give you more an overview of what of who refugees are and kind of the circumstances that they face, but also an overview of the UNHCR, which is the overall UN agency that is in charge of international protection. And basically they have the mandate to kind of make sure that refugees or asylum seekers are protected. So as I mentioned, we were really lucky enough to speak to Abigail Dawson, who was from the Consortium for Refugees and Migrants in South Africa. We had a really great discussion. It was pretty long discussion, but we've broken it up into different parts as well. So what we'll do is we'll play some music, we'll get back and we'll go straight into our interview with Abigail. What's next on our playlist? We've got music to play for a really long time right now. I guess you're just gonna have to forego my playlist and play something else.
This is the end station, but I can't move away from you. This is the edge of patience, but you won't prove yourself to me. Still you drain my soul, and even though it hurts, I can't slow down. Walls are closing in and I hit the ground. Whispers of tomorrow echo in my mind. Just one last time. Even though it hurts, I can't slow down. Walls are closing in and I hit the ground. Whispers of tomorrow echo in my mind. Just one last time. Even though it hurts, I can't slow down. Walls are closing in and I hit the ground. Whispers of tomorrow echo in my mind. Just one last time. Even though it hurts, I can't slow down. Walls are closing in and I hit the ground. Whispers of tomorrow echo in my mind. Just one last time.
So, to get into it, can you tell us a bit about yourself and the work you and the team at the consortium do?
Sure. I'm a social worker, and I've kind of moved into the advocacy communication space. I still do some individual counseling with refugees and migrants. But COMSA is a advocacy organization which has a membership base. So we don't see one-on-one clients, but we work through our members to kind of have more solidarity across the sector. We have members in 5 of the 9 provinces. And those organizations take up a number of responsibilities. Some of them are in the humanitarian and basic needs space. Some are legal, pro bono legal organizations and research organizations.
Okay.
So we facilitate kind of communication across the membership base, and then we run some kind of project work from our organization, which includes advocacy, like policy advocacy and lobbying, and then a lot of capacity building and training. So some examples of that would be with school administrators on kind of the current policy and law around allowing non-national children into schools. There are major issues around non-national children and undocumented children who are often South Africans actually being denied access to school. So we do a lot of capacity building training with kind of civil servants.
Okay, and do you work directly with government at all as well, in terms of, do you lobby them and make sure that your advocacy is aimed at government policy as well?
Yeah, a lot of our work is lobbying the government, mostly to change what they're doing. Unfortunately, as I'm sure we'll get into in the discussion, the asylum system is in complete crisis, and little has been done to change that, and we're of the view that the most recently passed Refugee Amendment Act will kind of further perpetuate the crisis and people's inability to get documented.
Yeah, and if we can look back at essentially what sparked this discussion were the recent protests that happened in Cape Town and the unrest. If you could just give us a bit of a background about why that kind of happened, or what that unrest was about.
Sure. I don't want to give too much detail or focus on this, because my general feeling is that as much as it's important and